Welcome to the Ranchonomics podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Good morning and welcome to the Ranchonomics podcast. I'm John Haskell and I am here with Wally Olson today, and we are going to talk about putting cattle out with other people and working with other people in general. Wally, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you coming today.
Very good. I appreciate being here.
Let's talk about a few things when we talk about putting cattle out with people, which is something you do a fair amount of. I'd like to understand why one would consider doing that. I have a perfectly good ranch. Why would I send cattle to live somewhere else?
The why is, there's a number of whys. One is it's a good way to expand your business very easily without overheads. And it's just, they've got all the stuff and you can use their stuff.
So by stuff, you mean they've got corrals, they've got pasture fences, they've got trucks, pickups, and trailers and all that stuff.
Hopefully they have enough stuff to run the ranch.
Good.
And the other why is it gives you a diversity of environment where you're at. If you are in the Western United States where you suffer from drought, move to the Southeast United States. All you have to do is ship a check.
Yeah.
And
it's cheaper to ship a check than it is to ship a load of cattle, right?
It's very much cheaper to ship a check. And another reason than the why is it is a whole lot easier to find people to put animals out with than to get the lease on a ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And when you lease a ranch, you pick up all the costs and overheads and stuff. Whereas one reason I do this is that people, I don't feel, charge the full value of their overheads. And so that's why one of the reasons I do it. Also, since I only have an acre of land, I couldn't bring any animals on an acre.
And you'd probably ruin Doris's garden.
Probably, yes.
Okay, so when you think about different parts of the country, and let's say, so we're in Laramie this week at the KLR marketing program with Ranching for Profit. So we're in a fairly dry, fairly wintry environment. What are some things you think about when you go to different parts of the country?
One thing is you think about costs.
Okay.
The only thing I'm looking for is profit, and then costs have the big relationships on profit. So I'm looking at costs. It is just cheaper to operate in the Southeast.
Yeah.
It's just.
And define the Southeast. So we're talking in the United States.
Southeast is east of I-35 and south of I-70.
Okay. I don't know where 70 goes after it leaves.
No, it goes through
Kansas.
Central, goes through central Missouri. And
okay.
There's a huge difference, in my opinion, north of I-70
yes.
and south of I-70.
Yep, I would agree.
For weather and everything.
Yep, I would agree with that. And what are the other critical components of that geography that make it so good?
It's just cheaper to operate down there.
Winter is not a big component, right?
Winter is not a big
volume of forage, probably not a problem.
Huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
The thing I think of when I think of east of I-35 is the greatest wrecks I've ever heard of that were caused by endophyte-infested tall fescue, which at one point I was terrified of and didn't know anything about other than bad things. And the more I think of it now, that is one of the greatest advantages there is in that part of the world.
Yeah. Endophyte-infected fescue is a great advantage. You just have to understand how to utilize it and purchase cattle from the Southeast that are adapted to it.
The thing it gives you is basically incredibly high quality winter grass, right?
That's correct. Yeah, very high quality winter feed that is just there.
Yeah.
But also there's advantages everywhere. All country has an unfair advantage, and you just need to learn how to utilize that unfair advantage and be adaptable to it.
Mm-hmm. Just out of curiosity, before you were around Ranching for Profit, had you ever heard of custom grazing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was.
So you were familiar with that before you came in?
Yep. I was involved in custom grazing.
Excellent.
And I did some custom grazing. You can have a ranch and you may custom graze on your ranch and put animals out. If you're, just like you said, we're in Laramie, and as I understand, the Laramie Plains is a hellhole in the winter.
Sorry to people who live in the Laramie Plains, but if you want wind, drought, insane insects, and a winter that lasts forever.
If you want 10-foot snow, you could summer cattle in the Laramie Plains and run your cow herd, if you wanted just to be in the cow herd business, in Ohio or Virginia or wherever.
Yeah, very good.
Now, when you get to one thing you need to be aware of when you get to going, you need to understand the rules and the culture. And let me tell you what, the culture of West Virginia and Ohio and stuff is a lot different than
Florida,
Wyoming and Montana. And
yeah.
you just need to understand that and how they do business. And you might as well face up. You're going to adapt to how they do business. They're not going to adapt how you do business.
Yep. Yeah, great. So rules and culture, is that human only? Is that adapting to the animals that are there, adapting to pasture conditions, that sort of thing?
Rules and cultures, you just need to understand how the ecosystem works and utilize it to the best of your ability. And then when you're dealing with the people, you got to have honesty first and then competency. And you can adjust some competency, but you can't adjust honesty.
Yeah, great. Very true.
And so if you're going to, you've got to take the time to go meet the people and understand where they're working and stuff and what they're doing, and understand if your culture and the way, and what I'm talking about your culture is how you do business. You know, since I'm basically focused on cutting costs and profit, are they focused on cutting costs and profit, or are they focused on having the greatest genetic animals in the world?
Great point. So making sure that what you value lines up with what they value. Yeah, very good. Do those have to be exactly the same, or can there be a reasonable degree of overlap to make that work?
There can be a reasonable degree of overlap. And I want, like just say I have a set of cows. I want to have the best genetic cattle that I can have for that area to a point. Yeah.
And for the right price.
And for the right price.
Right.
And one thing you need to understand how to utilize selection and stuff to achieve those goals. But
help me with that a little. Animal selection you're talking about?
Selection.
Okay. So how to build a good herd?
How to build a good herd. Basically, my deal is you buy frugal cows, and then you bring in really good genetics on the bull side, and then you have rapid turnover.
Mm-hmm.
And so within 6 or 7 years, you can have 2 generations turned over, and you will be right up there with the people that have done it for 45 years or whatever.
So you're not necessarily recommending, and this is a slightly different topic, but you don't necessarily go out and buy the best cows, but you can darn sure make a good competitive cow yourself.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think our access to genetics and the portability of those genetics is pretty impressive at this point.
Like I said, when putting animals out with people, you need to have honesty. Mm-hmm. And the way you have honesty is you make sure that they keep an inventory account, and you get monthly. Probably you will. The reason the people are looking for animals is they're needing cash flow. So they're going to want to be paid monthly. So you have a certain amount of paperwork that comes monthly. And when that paperwork ceases to come or gets blurred, you got a problem. And one thing that I didn't say is when you go in, you need to have how you're going to come out written out, because at times when you're coming out, it's not going to be the most gracious event.
So you're talking about having an
exit plan.
Yeah. Okay. And that isn't necessarily driven by something in the relationship that goes sour. That can be the market. That can be the weather. That could be some very extrinsic thing that happens.
Yeah, just
unexpected.
Yeah, just like in case of drought, it's understood that I leave first. And marketing, and if I have a cow herd, understand that if you're going to be involved with me, you're probably going to be calving a number of heifers, because we're going to be selling the cows when they're overvalued. And you just need to understand those are the things we're doing. And I may be with you starting out. The ultimate goal to me, whenever I put animals out, is the people I'm working with should be able to push me out and stuff. And then I can go on to another place.
Okay. So let's back up just a little to explain that more. So it's always intriguing to me when a business deal is good for both sides.
Yes.
And I think there's this perception or sort of common myth, if you will, that if one person is profiting, then somebody else isn't. And that obviously is not at all true. But what are the situations that would lead someone? One person wants to custom graze, one person wants to own cattle and have them custom grazed. Describe the situation where both sides profit. What leads to that?
One thing, we're talking about if you're young and starting out, most people get some land and yada, yada. What you need to do if you're just starting out is you need to stay very close to the cow.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's advantageous to you to just own cows. Mm-hmm. You find somebody that for some reason has land but doesn't have the capital to, and you blend those two together and you grow together, mm-hmm. is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And if you do it correctly, there's enough profit to go around, right?
Enough profit to go around very well.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good. And what you're really looking at is a division of how do you use your capital? I find it fascinating. I have friends that love the land business. I am interested in land, but I don't love the land business in the least. Like just really doesn't interest me, but I really love livestock. And so that's a place where someone else can do what they really like to do and what they understand, then I can do what I like to do and understand.
That's correct.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so we have a good exit plan. Let's talk a little about contracts. So do we need a contract? Is it good enough to just do a handshake deal?
No, you need a contract, and I'm a firm believer in honesty in the handshake deal.
Absolutely.
Yes, but people die, and you need to have it documented so if you die or they die, you know exactly what's got to be done.
Yeah. So the contract isn't necessarily for the two principal people, right? It's for the people left behind that have to undo this.
Yes, just like that gentleman that got struck by lightning in Walden, Colorado. Things happen.
Yep, they do. And when they happen fast, right? So correct. We don't have time to dot the I's and cross the T's in the moment. Yep. Okay. Very good. Anything else? When you mentioned the billing and sometimes paperwork and all gets irregular. Have you ever had one of these deals not go well?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know for sure why they didn't go well. Just things changed and came down to the paperwork was telling me that things weren't going quite right.
The paperwork, by you mean the regular flow of information?
Information coming in.
I think about that. You've told the story a number of times of the Kansas deal. I can't think of any of the names of the people involved, but I think you know what I mean, where there was a regular invoice, a regular inventory, and then after a certain period of time, those just stopped appearing. Communication got harder and harder, and then suddenly it
was time to go check it out, and it was time to get out. If there's multiple people, if you can get out first, you get out best.
Yeah.
It's the last person to leave gets home.
And I know we know a person that would testify to that very strongly in that particular deal.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Good. So not all of them go well. We prepared with an exit plan. What else would fill in how we have those things that happen? We planned for them. We prepared for them. What are the important parts of prepping?
The biggest thing is you go into a deal with a huge margin, so you can absorb problems.
And define a little of what you mean by huge margin. Do you mean 5%, 7%?
I'm talking about 25% or 30% margin in a deal.
Okay, so if you miss it by half.
You're still all right.
Okay.
If 10% of the calves die, you're still all right.
Yeah. And that margin just covers the risk of everything.
Correct.
Okay, so we're not looking to do just a deal that makes us $20. We're looking to do a deal that really makes all of it pretty good.
A couple of $100.
Okay. And when we think about the risk between the cattle owner and the grazer, how does that risk tend to be distributed?
You need to, one thing, the people you're working with, one of the biggest problems I get into is people that don't understand or give you enough. If you're buying the grazing and then also paying for the hay, grazers will tend to overstock, and you have to feed a lot of hay, and you need to be everybody on equal. One thing you can do is you can put so many cattle out with them, and if you need to adjust grazing, you just sell some.
Yeah, there are solutions to every one of these problems. Yes. Yeah.
I'm down to, I only own 12 cows of my own at this date. Everything else is involved in a relationship deal, and everybody that I'm dealing with has skin in the game, mm-hmm. and that's really makes it a lot better.
Yeah. Skin in the game, meaning they would have part ownership of the cattle?
Part ownership of the cattle.
Yeah. Love it. But you haven't always done it that way, right? Sometimes you've just used custom grazing.
I've just used custom grazing.
You've evolved to that.
Because people are needing cash flow.
Yeah, very good. And again, the idea that you're thinking about is this is an educational and a building tool. So ideally, you're there for a period, but then you're getting out.
Mm-hmm.
So the intention from the get-go is that not to be a permanent deal.
That's correct.
Very good. All right. Anything else we want to talk about on this? I think maybe one other thing I'd like to ask you before I totally set you free is let's talk a little about relationships. You mentioned honesty trumping competence. Is there anything else you're looking for in a situation? Is there anything else you're doing to build relationship with people that are far away?
Oh, basically, one thing is you need to make sure that you go visit them.
Yeah.
And in person.
Right.
And like I tell people, after about 30 seconds on being on a place, I know whether I'm going to do business or not. I cannot explain why that is. That's just the way it is.
So you trust your gut.
Trust my gut. And, just understand that, it is not all going to go well.
Plan accordingly.
Yeah, plan accordingly.
Okay, wonderful. Anything else you want to add? Anything we've skipped?
Nope, that's about it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for joining me. You gave a great presentation at our Ranch Right annual conference last winter down in Alabama. And I think this is a terribly important topic. We work with customers to help them look for opportunities either to bring in custom grazers, depending on their situation, or to graze other places. And the more examples I have seen where people run their own ranch and have cattle somewhere else and how that it impacts their bottom line has been pretty impressive. They don't all work, but I think one of the things we need to do is keep trying and when we're looking for ways to really build our own business. So thank you. I appreciate you teaching me about this and being willing to share. So thanks for being here today. Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.